Family only, my dad said, shutting the door. My sister laughed. They toasted with my $7,800. I froze every card and mailed court papers for New Year's. They sneered. You don't belong here. I stood outside watching my $7,800 holiday fund vanish without me. So I froze every account, stopped all payments, and sent a letter that started their new year with legal action. I stood outside in the cold night, my breath misting in the December air, holding the gift bags I'd carefully put together over weeks. Inside, the Christmas tree's glow reflected in the windows, and laughter spilled from the dining room. The door closed firmly behind me, its click sounding terribly final. You don't belong here, my sister scoffed just before the door shut. I caught one last glimpse of her self-satisfied face as she turned back to the table, her expensive necklace glittering under the chandelier. The entire family was gathered around the large oak table I had bought for them last year. They were raising toasts with champagne I had, without realizing it, paid for. My $7,800 holiday money was being happily spent without me. I stayed there for a moment, blinking against the bite of the cold and the sting of betrayal. My hands trembled slightly, but not from the winter air. From inside, I could still hear the echo of my father's voice. Family only at this table. Family. That word felt like poison now. The truth was, I should have seen this unfolding. 4 years, I had been the quiet financial backer of their lives, settling my sister's credit card bills, assisting my parents with their accumulating expenses, covering my niece's school fees, summer camps, and even a portion of my brother-in-law's business venture that failed before it even got off the ground. Yet here I was, excluded, dismissed like an unwelcome stranger. I slowly turned and walked back to my car, the snow crunching under my boots. The brightly wrapped presents in my backseat now seemed like a cruel joke. I had carefully selected something special for each of them. A designer purse for my sister, a limited edition watch for my father, even a set of rare teas my mother claimed to adore. But none of it mattered. Not to them. As I sat behind the wheel, staring blankly ahead, something inside me snapped, but not in the way they anticipated, not in the way they desired. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. Instead, for the first time in years, I felt clarity. I would no longer be the family's cash machine. I would no longer fund their lavish lifestyles while they spoke ill of me behind my back. If they wanted distance, I would give them exactly that. And so, while they celebrated my absence inside, I began to plan my own kind of holiday present, one they wouldn't be able to return or disregard. 2 days later, after freezing every credit card, canceling every automatic withdrawal, and severing every financial lifeline they had comfortably relied on, I placed one final envelope in the mailbox. Certified mail, legal papers enclosed. Their new year would begin not with festivities, but with court proceedings. You might believe this all began on Christmas Eve. You'd be mistaken. The discord in my family had been festering for years, like mold silently spreading behind expensive wallpaper. The truth is, I was never truly family to them. I was a wallet with a pulse. It started after college. I had secured a steady job, nothing extravagant but reliable. My sister Lisa, supposedly the family's prized possession, had already developed a taste for luxury far beyond her means. My father used to quip that she was born wearing designer shoes. My mother called her our little princess. And me? I was the practical one, which in their vocabulary meant the one who pays. When Lisa's husband left her after deceit, lies, and draining their savings, my parents turned to me. Family helps family, my mother whispered like a broken record, her eyes wide with guilt-laced manipulation. I agreed, of course I did. Ellie, my niece, was barely 4 at the time. Someone had to keep a roof over their heads. First came the rent, then the groceries, then utility bills, then emergencies that never seemed to end. You're such a good son. Your sister is lucky to have you, my father would say, never reaching for his own checkbook. But the real toxicity emerged later, when Lisa started working again, a job with a decent salary and full benefits. I thought my financial burden would finally lessen. I had sacrificed vacations, promotions, even relationships to keep my family together. But instead of gratitude, Lisa simply upgraded. She bought a new car while I drove my decade-old sedan. She acquired designer bags while I clipped coupons for groceries. She enrolled Ellie in private ballet classes while I skipped my own medical appointments to avoid extra costs. And still they desired more. You make more money than us, Lisa would say, her voice syrupy sweet but laden with malice. It's only fair. My parents, sitting silently at the dinner table, always nodded in agreement. Of course they did. The arrangement suited them perfectly. But their avarice wasn't even the worst part. The worst was the humiliation. At family dinners, Lisa would subtly jab at me in front of everyone. Oh, don't be so stingy, Dave. She'd sneer if I questioned her latest extravagant expense. Not everyone can live like you. No vacations, no hobbies. But I guess that's how you afford to help us, right, Mom? The room would erupt in awkward chuckles, as if mocking me with some inside joke. I would feign a laugh and swallow my pride again, but everything shattered the night I overheard them. I had arrived early for Thanksgiving. As I quietly stepped into the house, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Honestly, Lisa, my father chuckled, your brother's such a failure. No wife, no kids, nothing. He clings to this family like it's all he's got. Yeah, my sister added, her voice dripping with cruelty. He should be grateful we even include him at all. I mean, who else would tolerate him? At least he's good for something, paying my bills. They laughed. My mother joined in. I froze. All those years of sacrifice, of quietly absorbing every financial blow, of being the dependable one. And this was how they spoke about me behind closed doors. I didn't confront them that night. Not yet. I left quietly, my stomach churning with resentment. But inside me, something shifted permanently. For the first time, I allowed myself to see the truth. They didn't love me. They loved what I provided. The next month, my sister's demands grew bolder. She called, asking if I could cover a small loan, $5,000 for a down payment on a luxury timeshare. I said, no. Her response was immediate and brutal. Well, after everything I've done for you, she spat. Don't be a selfish failure, Dave. That word again, failure. The very next day, my father called me, his voice full of feigned disappointment. Son, you know Lisa is struggling. What's a few thousand to you? You've always helped before. I almost laughed. Struggling with her designer handbags, spa weekends, and luxury. Vacations? Struggling? Then came the ultimate slight. My sister sent me a message. You're lucky we still let you sit with us at the family table. Most families would have cut off dead weight like you already. That Christmas they did precisely that. And when my father shut the door in my face with those final words, family only at this table, they weren't just excluding me from dinner. They were excluding me from the family entirely. But here's the part they didn't see coming. I had evidence. Literal receipts. Years' worth of bank statements, wire transfers, credit card payments I made on their behalf. Every dime I spent bailing them out. Every loan I covered. Every bill I quietly paid while they mocked me behind my back. All carefully documented. And now, all of it was in my lawyer's hands. Because this wasn't just emotional anymore. It was financial exploitation, fraud. And by the time they opened that envelope on New Year's Day, certified mail priority delivery, they would realize that I wasn't the family failure. I was their victim. And victims eventually fight back. The certified letter arrived on January 2nd, right after they finished spending my money on their extravagant New Year's Eve party. I know exactly how it unfolded. My father would have opened the envelope first, his face twisting in confusion as he pulled out the thick stack of legal documents. My mother probably tried to read over his shoulder. Lisa, my sister, standing behind them, arms crossed, smug as always at first. But then the smugness evaporated because attached to those papers was a full financial audit. Every transfer, every loan, every silent bailout I had provided for over 6 years, itemized, time-stamped, and accompanied by my lawyer's demand for full reimbursement under the grounds of financial abuse, coercion, and sustained exploitation. And attached to that, a notice of pending civil litigation. I didn't hear from them for 3 days. Then my phone rang. It was my father. The second I answered, the shouting began. What do you think you're doing? He roared so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. You're suing your own family. I stayed calm, utterly cold. I'm protecting myself, I said flatly, from people who use me, legally, financially, emotionally for years. You ungrateful little. My father's voice cracked with rage. After everything we've done for you. You mean after everything I've done for you? I corrected. After the thousands I've poured into your bills, your vacations, Lisa's shopping sprees, Ellie's private school. And all while you sat back laughing behind my back? Yes, you're welcome. My mother jumped on the line. She must have been on speaker. Her voice was full of practiced tears. Sweetheart, please. We're family. We made mistakes, but this is cruel. You kicked me out of Christmas, I said, my voice low but steady. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Then came Lisa. Predictably, she couldn't resist inserting herself. You always thought you were better than us, she hissed. All you've ever done is hold money over our heads. You were just bitter that I was the favorite. Favorite even now, she couldn't help herself. You're right, Lisa, I said, my tone colder than ice. You were the favorite. Congratulations. But your little reign is over. The court will see exactly how much you appreciated me. You wouldn't dare, she spat. It's already done. I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt lighter, like a man who had been carrying a burning house on his back and finally dropped it. 2 weeks later came the mediation hearing. They thought I was bluffing. They walked into that conference room like royalty. My father in his expensive suit, my mother with her fake tears, Lisa in full designer attire. All three sat across from me like predators ready to strike. But then my attorney opened the folder. Exhibits A through G bank statements. Signed loan agreements. Screenshots of texts where they openly ridiculed me while demanding more money. Voicemails where Lisa laughed about how easy it was to get me to pay. Even a few recordings I'd made when they thought I wasn't listening. Their faces drained of color as each document slid across the table. My sister's false confidence crumbled first. She looked around, desperate for someone to stop the bleeding. Where did you get all this? She whispered, her voice thin. I kept records, Lisa, I answered simply. Unlike you. My father was next. His voice was brittle. This isn't necessary. We can resolve this like adults. You had years to behave like adults, my lawyer cut in sharply. You chose exploitation. You're fortunate we're offering private settlement instead of criminal charges. My mother tried her last resort, guilt. You're destroying this family. No, I said, you destroyed it. I'm just documenting the wreckage. Silence. Even Lisa, the master manipulator, had no retort. The final settlement was harsh for them and satisfying for me. A full repayment schedule. No more financial contact allowed. Failure to comply. Immediate escalation to court with criminal charges for financial fraud and coercion. They signed. They had no choice. As I walked out of the building that day, my sister's final words followed me like the pitiful whimper of a wounded animal. You'll regret this. I turned to her one last time. No, I smiled. For the first time in my life I won't. The settlement was signed, but the war wasn't over. In many ways it had just begun. For the first time in years, I cut off every financial artery they had comfortably drained. The payments stopped. The favors ceased. Their emergencies were no longer my concern. And that's when the panic set in. 3 weeks after the mediation, my mother called. Not to apologize, of course not, but to test the waters. Sweetheart, I was just wondering if we could talk privately? No lawyers, no anger. I paused for a moment, relishing the desperation in her voice. I have nothing to discuss, I said calmly. The settlement speaks for itself. Her voice cracked. But you're punishing us, Dave. You're tearing this family apart. You tore it apart long before the lawyers showed up, I replied coldly and hung up. But it didn't stop there. They couldn't believe I was serious. They had spent years shaping me into their obedient, spineless provider. And now that puppet was severing his own strings. A few days later, my father showed up at my apartment uninvited. The knock was sharp, urgent. I opened the door to see him standing there. His once arrogant posture now slightly slumped. He looked smaller somehow, as though the weight of his own choices was finally crushing him. We need to fix this, he said, trying to sound firm but only managing to sound pathetic. There's nothing to fix, I answered. You think you've won something here? He hissed, voice rising. You'll be alone for the rest of your life. Family forgives. You'll regret this. I stared at him, my voice colder than ice. You don't get to preach forgiveness to the person you robbed. He opened his mouth to retaliate, but no words came. The silence between us was louder than any argument we had ever had. Finally, he stormed off, muttering curses under his breath. And then Lisa snapped. She was always the most fragile one behind all her bravado, but I had underestimated just how badly her little kingdom would crumble. 2 months after the settlement, she called me, not to apologize, not to make peace, but to threaten. "I hope you're happy," she spat through the phone, venom practically dripping. "You humiliated me. My credit's destroyed. My accounts are frozen because of your little lawsuit. You destroyed your own credit when you lived on my money for half a decade," I replied calmly. She laughed bitterly. "You think you've won? You're pathetic, Dave. You'll never be anything but bitter and alone. You'll never have a family because no one would ever choose to be with you." Her words were meant to stab deep, but they didn't. Not anymore. Because I finally understood something. Her only real power was the guilt she could make me feel. And the guilt was gone. "You're wrong," I said softly. "Because for the first time in my life, I've chosen myself." And I hung up. The fallout grew even uglier after that. I heard rumors through distant relatives. My parents were forced to sell one of their vacation homes to cover what they owed me. My father's retirement plans evaporated overnight. The fancy country club membership canceled. The luxury SUV Lisa loved to flaunt, repossessed. Lisa moved back in with my parents. Her Instagram profile quietly disappearing. No more perfectly staged vacations. No more fake luxury posts. Just silence. They tried to portray their downfall as my betrayal to anyone who would listen. But people talk and people listen. And slowly the narrative shifted. More relatives began to distance themselves from them, quietly admitting they had always suspected Lisa was a parasite and that my parents had enabled her. The final blow came unexpectedly. One afternoon my lawyer called. "There's been a development," he said. "The district attorney's office opened a preliminary investigation into possible tax fraud tied to the funds you transferred over the years." I blinked. "Wait, tax fraud?" He explained. Apparently, my parents had never properly reported the financial assistance I had given them over the years. They had presented it as gifts to the IRS, despite the amounts being far beyond non-taxable thresholds. Combined with the paper trail we had gathered for the civil case, it was enough to trigger federal interest. In other words, their greed might cost them even more. I sat there for a long moment processing everything. "This could ruin them," I said slowly. "Yes," my lawyer agreed. "But it wasn't your doing. They built this house of cards. All you did was finally stop holding it up." Weeks later, my mother left me one final voicemail. Her voice was thin, fragile, defeated. "Dave, please. We were wrong. I see that now. Your father, he can't sleep at night. Lisa, she's not well. We're lost without you. Please call me. Please." I listened to the message twice. Then I calmly deleted it. Because after all the years of manipulation, of betrayal, of being used like a human ATM, I no longer needed their approval. I no longer needed them at all. The chains were broken. They had spent years calling me a failure. And yet, in the end, I was the only one who walked away free. 1 year later, I sat in my office overlooking the city skyline. The air smelled different now, like freedom. My life had shifted completely. The crushing weight of my family's greed, manipulation, and endless demands was gone. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living to fund someone else's poor choices, and they were still unraveling. After the tax fraud investigation gained momentum, everything spiraled for them even faster than I expected. My parents were hit with massive penalties. Decades of questionable accounting unraveled under federal audits. Their precious golden years were now drenched in unpaid debts, legal fees, and frozen assets. The house they loved to display as a symbol of their success sold at auction. Lisa, oh poor Lisa, had it even worse. Her credit was decimated, her bank accounts frozen, and when the IRS started digging through her finances, they uncovered things even I didn't know about. Offshore transfers, unpaid business taxes, and fake shell companies she used to conceal side hustles from her own husband. It turned criminal. Indictments were issued. She pleaded out to avoid prison. The same sister who once called me a failure as she slammed the Christmas door in my face now worked night shifts as a waitress, barely making rent. Her luxury handbags long since sold. Her Instagram deleted. Her fake influencer lifestyle reduced to nothing. Her fall was spectacular. But none of that brought me the real satisfaction. The real victory was internal. For years they had conditioned me to believe I was weak, only valuable if I was useful to them. They weaponized guilt. They weaponized family. But when I finally cut the cord, I realized something devastatingly simple. Their love was always conditional. My love for myself never should have been. Last week I received one final letter, handwritten from my mother. David, I know you'll never forgive us. I see that now. You were always the strongest one even though we treated you like the weakest. We failed you. I hope you find peace. We cannot ask for your help anymore. We cannot ask for anything. I am truly sorry. I read it once, twice, then calmly slid it into the shredder. Because this was no longer my burden. As I sat back, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my attorney. IRS investigation officially closed. No further claims against you. You're 100% cleared. I smiled. For the first time in years I had full closure. No more legal traps. No more debts. No more family shackles. I had built something they could never take. A life that was finally mine. They called me a failure. But the truth was simple. I was never the failure. I was their lifeline. And once I cut the cord, they drowned in their own greed.